Hello, our live Q&A is just moments from starting. Panelists are ready, and I hope you've had a chance to view the amazing film we're about to discuss. Hi, my name is Chad Beal. I'm the Acting Chief of Technical Services here at HFC, and thank you for joining us for the third live event in our HFC 50th Anniversary Celebration Series. For those of you unfamiliar with who we are and what we do, the Harpers Ferry Center is the media design center for the entire National Park Service. We get our name from our location, Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. We are the hub for films, as well as exhibits, maps, signs, waysides, brochures, collections, and conservation. Tonight, we are excited to present a behind-the-scenes look at an award-winning film, Beneath the Planes, the Minuteman Missile on Alert, featuring the executive producer and subject matter experts. This will be an active Q&A session, and we encourage you to enter questions and comments in the chat throughout the program. This event is being live captioned, so please turn on captions within YouTube if you would like to view those. I'm honored to introduce our moderator for this Q&A session, Mark Southern. Mark is the film producer here at Harpers Ferry Center, and he served as an executive producer for the Minuteman Missile project. I will now turn things over to Mark.
Thank you, Chad. I'm very excited to be part of the program, and I appreciate everyone who's joining us this evening. I'm juggling screens right now, so pardon me if I'm looking all over the place. Before we get into audience questions, which is the main point of tonight's event, I want to briefly introduce you to our panelists. As Chad mentioned, I am a film producer with Harpers Ferry Center. My name is Mark Southern, and I've had the privilege of doing this job for almost exactly 17 years now. I think this is my anniversary this week. I plan and produce films and digital media for national parks across the country, in addition to the Minuteman Missile Project that we'll be talking about tonight. Some of the things that I have been working on lately, I'm just wrapping up a project for the Selma to Montgomery National Historic Trail in Alabama. I'm working on a project up at Grant's Tomb in New York. Just wrapped one up for Minidoka National Historic Site out in Idaho. Wright Brothers in North Carolina. And my big one right now is the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. So wish me luck. My partner in crime on this project was Eric Leonard. And Eric is the superintendent of Minuteman Missile National Historic Site in South Dakota. Eric's been with the National Park Service for over 20 years now. And for the past 5 years, he's led a very significant transformation of the Minuteman Missile Visitor Center and the visitor experience. They built all new exhibits. They did this film, and he's very active in social media. And he's really done an amazing job there. If you haven't had a chance to go to South Dakota and visit, I highly recommend it. It's very close to Badlands National Park. And if you're on your way to Mount Rushmore, you'll go right by there, depending on where you're coming from. If you've watched the film, and I hope all of you have, but if you watch the film, you will certainly recognize our next panelist, Linda Aldrich. Linda was one of the first female Air Force officers to serve on a Minuteman missile combat crew. She later served as crew commander and instructor commander at Whitman Air Force Base. She was the Minuteman operations instructor at Vandenberg Air Force Base, missile squadron commander at F.E. Warren Air Force Base, and senior military advisor at the Office of National Drug Control Policy. Colonel Aldrich retired from the Air Force in 2011 after 29 years of service, and she's joining us tonight from Lincoln, Nebraska.
Thank you. Appreciate you letting me join you.
I'm sure you will also recognize Al Hall from the film. Al is joining us from South Dakota tonight in a very interesting location that we'll be talking about in a minute. Al's personal account of a nuclear false alarm is one of the most compelling and memorable moments in the film, in my mind. Al served as a missile maintainer in the 44th Missile Maintenance Squadron at Ellsworth Air Force Base between 1975 and 1994. And today he serves as a volunteer at Minuteman Missile National Historic Site. So welcome, Al.
Thank you.
Our next panelist is Gretchen Heefner, who is joining us from Boston, Massachusetts. Gretchen is featured throughout this film, and her book, which I will mention in a minute, was a Bible for this project. It was really an invaluable work, both for the film and for the exhibits. Gretchen is an associate professor of history at Northeastern University in Boston, where she teaches and researches the history of the U.S. and the world with a focus on the Cold War. Her first book, The Missile Next Door, The Minuteman in the American Heartland, traces the deployment of nuclear missiles across the American heartland in the late 50s and 60s. Welcome, Gretchen.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
And finally, we have a distinguished guest who was not in the film, but she brings a very important perspective to our panel tonight. Chris Kirby is superintendent of the Manhattan Project National Historic Park, which preserves portions of 3 World War II sites where the U.S. developed the world's first atomic weapons. We're going to be talking to Chris a little bit later in the program about her park's observance of the 75th anniversary of the atomic bombings of Japan, which occurred in August 1945. Chris, I know you've had a really busy day today, and I really appreciate your taking time to share your thoughts with us tonight on these pivotal moments in world history.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Great. As Chad mentioned, this will be an active Q&A session, so if you have any questions or comments, please enter them in the chat, and we will answer as many of them as we can. But first, I'm going to go around the panel and ask a few basic questions, and I'm going to start with Eric with a very obvious question. Where the heck are you right now? Tell us about your location.
Al and I are in the resource. We are 31 feet underground below the plains of South Dakota in Delta One Launch Control Center. And I'm sitting right next to the command console, and Al is next to the deputy. The underground control center is the hub where 2 Air Force officers monitored 10 nuclear missiles for a generation. This is the premier thing that in normal circumstances the public gets to see on tours of this facility. This summer, this space is off limits because it's a prairie submarine for 2 people. It's not a place where you can social distance at all. And that's a challenge for the park because we preserved military facilities that were never meant for tourism. They were meant for a very specific mission. The behind the owl is an opening that goes into a small tunnel through about 5 feet of concrete, and it is in normal circumstances would have been closed by a 5-ton glass door. That glass door sealed in the missile combat crew and protected them in the event of a nuclear exchange so that they could complete their mission. The glass door is one of the famous symbols of the park. It has art on it that was painted in 1990 by Tony Gatlin, and this very famous representation of the mission of Air Force Missileers and a representation of the dark humor that developed around the people that worked in this world. Just a short distance from the glass door is an elevator, very small elevator that would have been used maybe 5 times a day by the Air Force, going up and down. And above us is a very large ranch-style house, or at least it looks like a house from a distance. The for 30 years, a total of 10 Air Force personnel worked here at Delta One, 2 underground, 8 above ground. We're 10 miles away from the missile silo we preserve, Delta 9. And Delta 9 looks like nothing. It's a 1-acre fenced enclosure. Today, there's a glass structure that allows an almost impossible view. And today, this is the only place in America where you can stand on the barrel of a missile silo and look down. And inside the 80-foot launch tube is the Minuteman II training missile. So, and no warhead, no fuel, but it's a representation of the arsenal that was 1,000 missiles at its height. And 15 miles to the east of the missile silo is our visitor center. And it's built, a long way away so we can protect the landscape around the 2 sites. The visitor center is where the film is shown. It's where our exhibits are. It's the modern convenience. Like 2 sites, it's immediately off Interstate 90, where, for half a century, Americans have been driving past all of this stuff. And that's a very brief overview of the park.
Great, thank you very much. I want to turn to Linda for just a second, because Linda, you worked in a capsule very similar to this.
Yes, I did.
If not the same, you didn't work in this same one, did you?
Not in this same one, but they're all basically the same.
What was that like, just on a day-to-day basis, working in an underground bunker like that with such an awesome responsibility? I mean, you were basically waiting day after day for orders that, if carried out, could devastate humanity. Just kind of walk us through what it was like for you.
I think for those of us who worked in nuclear operations during the Cold War, we were fully aware of the concept of deterrence, meaning if I'm here, I'm going to do my job, respond to a nuclear launch order, then my primary adversary, the USSR, they understand if they launch, so will I. So neither side wins. And then we have a balance. They don't want their country destroyed, and neither do we. So when you were on alert, you knew you were a target should that war with nuclear weapons begin. So I was very aware my job was vital, and it also demanded absolute adherence to procedural checklists. Now, in that aspect, I'm naturally detail-oriented, so the career field was a good fit. I was also grateful to be in the Air Force after being told I was too old to come in and my English literature degree wouldn't make me fit in the missile field. But that all worked out. So I loved my job. The bottom line for me when I went on alert is, if you are going to destroy my country and everything in it that I love, I will make sure that you regret it and end it as quickly as possible. So I'm going to do my job so you don't do that.
And now you see why we put Linda in the film. She's not only a great professional, she has great sound bites. So I want to go to Al for a second. Al, you were sharing the room with Eric.
Yes.
You had a very different job than Linda. Your job, as you alluded to earlier, was maintaining missiles. And in the film, we saw a reenactment of a very scary day in your career, a nuclear false alarm. We interviewed quite a few missileers for this project, and several of them described the job as days and days of boredom, punctuated by moments of sheer terror. Does that ring true for you? Was that your experience, or what was a typical day at the office like for you?
Well, I had the greatest job in the world. Basically, the typical day in the office wasn't really in the office. It was miles and miles on the road. We are only allowed to work a total of 16 hours from the time we show up at our work center And then when we depart the missile wing hangar for the field, where that's at our office, as an example, like Delta 9, your typical one-way drive is anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half, sometimes 3 hours, depending on the weather and the site. So, it's not boredom when you're going out there to do the work. It is boredom when you're sitting in the office. The other things, as far as day-to-day operations are concerned, you kind of hope everything goes right, but like anything else, you have Murphy's Law, and then we'll have to wait and make sure we get our parts and whatever else we need to bring that missile back on alert. Because if it's off alert, there's a target not being covered.
Thanks, Al. We'll get back to you in a minute. Gretchen, you literally wrote the book on the deployment of Minuteman missiles across the Heartland. What drew you to this subject in the first place?
Good question. I have a lot of answers to it, but I'll keep it brief if I can. So I think as a historian, what I'm always looking for is kind of unexpected, out of the way stories, and the way that everyday people kind of like you and me would interact with high policy and sort of high politics. And being trained as a Cold War historian, I was looking for stories that dealt with how sort of Americans lived the Cold War. And the deployment of Minuteman missiles to the Heartland was sort of the obvious choice once I found it, right? This is a way that I think one senator in 1961, when the missiles were being deployed, said, and I quote, "This was foreign policy coming to Main Street," right? So there was really no better place to kind of see how the Cold War was lived by people, sort of everyday average Americans going about their life, suddenly had nuclear weapons deployed in their neighborhoods, or next door, as the sort of title of my book alludes to. And so when I started digging around into this topic in the early 2000s, it was really for a paper I was writing. I realized that there was very little written about it. Surprisingly, I thought it was a kind of unexpected hidden story. And as I started interviewing people, I started interviewing missileers and airmen and residents, people who were working for the Park Service at the time, who were building out the national park site. The stories were just so captivating and so interesting, and there was actually so much drama in the story of missile deployment that I just kept following it. And so that's what I ended up writing about. A lot of the book is actually about how rural residents accepted or dealt with having nuclear missiles deployed in their sort of landscape. I think Lindy Kirkbride appears in the video, and I interviewed her, and she talked about driving her kids past missile sites to school every morning and having to talk about that, or sort of plowing around the 1 acre missile site that was on people's properties. And most people, I think, accepted their responsibility and their role as sort of patriotic citizens to accept the missile sites. But that doesn't mean there wasn't some drama about sort of people losing their property or having sites taken and being concerned about cattle and livestock being injured or sort of damaged somehow through this process. So there's just wonderfully rich stories, and people were so generous with their time and their willingness to share their stories and their papers even, and letters and photographs. So that's what led me to this story and made me keep coming back. I've been able to visit the site, which was pretty awesome. And Eric gave us a tour of it. It was great.
Great. I'm going to go to Erica. Chris, I will come back to you in a second, but I think before we get too deep into this, we ought to talk about the film itself. And Eric, I wanted you to tell us just a little bit about Beneath the Plains, and how did the project get started in the first place, and what were your goals for the film?
The park was authorized by Congress in 1999. Operations began in about 2004. That was the year the first public tours occurred. And so one of the things we don't often think about when we think about national parks is they take a while to sort of come into being. And so a decade after tours started, the visitor center was constructed, and the park staff were able to move out of 2 trailer houses. In that visitor center, it was a blank slate. The exhibits were under development, but hadn't been finished. And when I arrived, we were working on that project, working on the film, and we had an opportunity to fill in the story. Because the truth is, most visitors, they're driving Interstate 90 and they're like, hey, what's that? And they pull off. They aren't prepared for the park. They don't have a lot of context. And a measure of this is the most asked question our staff gets is some variation of, we still have misses. And so the film needed to provide a background, because there's an increasing number of people who do not have lived experience of the Cold War. So you have to tell them why this was important, talk about what came before, and again, in reference to today's anniversary, at the 2-minute mark, once we've done the landscape introduction, we pivot to the end of the Manhattan Project and what happens in August of 1945. And we also had an opportunity, we're telling such a recently past part of our history that people like Al, Linda, and others are able to give their voice. And that was really one of the gifts of the project. The interviews that were done, even the parts that we didn't use in the film, are really, really valuable for those of us telling the story.
Well, Chris, you can kind of relate to what some of what Eric was saying about starting up a park. You are the superintendent of a park. I believe it's a fairly recent park that tells the story of the dawn of the atomic age. Can you tell us a little bit about your park, Manhattan Project National Historical Park? What is it and where is it?
Sure. Yeah, the park will actually be 5 years old in November. And so it was established by an act of Congress at the end of 2014, but it was established where Congress directed the National Park Service and the Department of Energy to partner together. And so the park wasn't officially established until a year later when we completed a memorandum of agreement about how we would mutually operate the park. And so the park itself is located in Hanford, Washington, which is in East Washington, right on the Columbia River. Los Alamos, New Mexico, that's the site everyone seems to know the most about. And then Oak Ridge, Tennessee, which is just about 20 minutes northwest of Knoxville, Tennessee. And all of the facilities that are in the park right now are owned and operated under the jurisdiction of the Department of Energy. And the majority of them are, obviously, they're on still secure nuclear sites. Obviously, the Manhattan Project sites are kind of what started the secure nuclear complexes that we still have today. So it's only fitting and makes sense that these sites are still on land owned and operated by the Department of Energy, because there's a lot of security protocols still in place. And there's a lot of, safety things that the Department of Energy are clear experts at managing, and they're experts at managing these facilities. So the National Park Service, we're responsible for interpretation of the Manhattan Project story. And I view that as a very big responsibility. And it's obviously not an easy, straightforward path.
If someone wants to visit one of these 3 sites, first of all, can they? And if so, what is the visitor experience?
Sure. So right now, during the time of the COVID pandemic, 2 of our 3 sites are closed to visitors completely. But normally, and I'll start with the site that's open in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, our visitor center is in the Children's Museum of Oak Ridge. So it's a great partnership. It actually was an elementary school during the Manhattan Project, and now there's a wonderful children's museum in there. And so they have a lot of really good exhibits about the Manhattan Project, especially in Oak Ridge. We also partner with the Department of Energy. They run the American Museum of Science and Energy there as well. So that's another location you can visit in Oak Ridge. If you're going to Los Alamos, we are in a visitor center kind of right downtown. Los Alamos County is very supportive of the park. And so we are located in a central location downtown where you can come in and meet some of our staff and get a little bit of information. But I always say Los Alamos, the big piece there is going and just walking around the central part of town, because there's a lot of buildings where, that's where Oppenheimer was primarily stationed. His house is still there. It's in private ownership, but it's, you can walk by Oppenheimer's house. And then there's also the Bradbury Science Museum that is operated by the Department of Energy. That's a really great history of the Department of Energy, the Manhattan Project, and the Atomic Energy Commission. And then in Hanford, Washington, people can tour April through November. There are tours of the B reactor, which is the world's first continuously operating industrial scale reactor. So the B reactor is what manufactured the plutonium that was used to fuel the Fat Man bomb that was dropped over Nagasaki. And so visitors can tour that 6 days a week, April through November. And obviously, so Hanford and Los Alamos are closed right now.
Which obviously brings up a point that I had alluded to earlier. Today is a very solemn anniversary. It's the 75 years ago, the United States dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima. And on August 9th, the U.S. Army Air Force dropped an atomic bomb over Nagasaki, Japan. And that was the second and so far the last nuclear bombing of a population. Chris, can you tell us how your park is observing these events?
Yeah, this was a really, I guess, meaningful project to all of us at the park, and we started talking about it last fall because we knew we had an obligation to talk about these events. They changed the world that day. They're extremely significant. They're fraught with controversy. They're very complex, and so we started thinking about an event that would not advocate and not be political, but be respectful, and not just respectful of all the victims of the atomic weapons, but respectful of all the loss and sacrifice that occurred in World War II. As we all know, tens of millions of lives were lost in World War II, both military and civilian. And so these bombings actually, happened in the waning days of World War II, and we just thought it would be a great moment to provide an opportunity for people to reflect on that loss and sacrifice in whatever way was personal and meaningful to them, so not telling people how to reflect on it. And so we, beginning this morning at dawn in Oak Ridge, so dawn Eastern time, we launched what are called our Days of Peace and Remembrance. And so this morning in Oak Ridge, Tennessee at the AK Bissell Park, there's a peace bell that was manufactured, or there was a joint effort between citizens of Oak Ridge and citizens of Japan, and we invited the public to come out and ring the bell and then personally record the reason that they rang the bell that spoke to them personally. And we will archive all of those and store them for history. The other, we are just doing from this point on, then we are doing virtual activities. The Oak Ridge event, we had all the proper social distancing in place and all the appropriate PPE, but that's our only live event that we'll be having. And so now we're doing a lot of social media and virtual things. So throughout the weekend, if anyone wants to virtually ring the bell, they can online and leave a digital message of peace. We're archiving all of those as well. And then on Sunday, on the anniversary of Nagasaki, we'll be featuring a film that's called Lights of Peace. And it will be luminaries that are staged along the Columbia River in Richland, Washington. And there will be a song over the city that will be playing over that was commissioned actually for the 50th anniversary of Hiroshima, that is in honor to victims of Hiroshima. So that's the manner in which we're honoring it. I think the biggest piece of the project are our messages of peace. So we are soliciting origami cranes from people around the world and throughout the country. The origami crane in Japan is a symbol of resilience and peace. And there are some very significant links to the atomic bombings and the origami crane. And so we've been soliciting messages, people to fold an origami crane, send their own message of peace on it and send it to the park. And we will be putting all of these messages in a time capsule that will be opened on the 100th anniversary of the bombings. And we also, for those of you who are origami crane challenged, on our website, you can just cut out a flat 2D crane and you can write a message of peace and send that to us as well. So we were trying to make sure that everyone that wanted to could participate. And so far as of last night, we had received cranes from Japan, Australia, Bulgaria, and then many from around the US. And then I did see a news clip from Japanese public television today talking about a number of people around the United States that will be submitting cranes, including one of the survivors of Hiroshima. So we're really looking forward to, I was kind of teared up when I was watching that part of it. So we're really looking forward to the opportunity of receiving all these and really, like I said, putting them in a time capsule and providing them to the people that come after me in 25 years to open up on the 100th anniversary.
And you're still going to be there, right?
No. I mean, I might be, participating, but I will not be working.
Well, thank you, Chris. Al, I want to go to you for a second because you have a personal connection. Besides being a missile maintenance person, being a missileer yourself, you have a very personal connection to the 75th anniversary. Tell us about that.
Sure. It's like I said earlier today, today is my birthday. Not really. My father was in the Army, and he was on the island of Tinian when they brought the bomb parts in. My mother, who's Japanese, was originally born and lived in Yokohama, Japan. And then because of the bombings that were occurring in that area, she went to Hiroshima, because Hiroshima did not receive any bombings during World War II. And at the time, her family thought the United States was planning an invasion, and it would be better to have everybody with their immediate family. So she left Hiroshima. About 4 hours later is when the bomb arrived. And during the occupation of Japan, my dad met my mom, and then I came to be, and kind of a strange occurrence, in the Air Force, I've been working on and around nuclear weapons my entire career.
Chad just put a photo up of Al at the Trinity site there. What goes through your mind when you see that photo, Al?
Well, yeah, a lot of things. The technology. I was amazed at everything that was involved, and considering back in 1945, it was truly amazing. My mom, when she was still alive, we would talk about it after she found out what I did in the Air Force. And, it's one of those things that brings up certain emotions, but I understand too.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Al. I want to see if we've got any questions from the audience. We've been talking for about 30 minutes now, and I wanted to make sure that we leave plenty of time for audience questions. We did get one earlier, which I think Eric has answered in chat, but which launch control center is on the lower right? And you're not on the lower right anymore. You're in the upper right, but
Yeah.
So Al, you were in the same location as Eric. You're in South Dakota. And
that's correct. Like I said, I'm sitting by the deputy's console. We're at Delta 1. We're 30 feet underground. And, I will tell you this, being a volunteer for the national park, especially this particular facility, has been an eye opener, because of all the years I've worked maintaining this system. We never really had the opportunity to show the public or talk to the public about it. And now that this is a historic site, it has brought a lot of questions. And I'll tell you one thing that was kind of strange to me. The first day I started giving tours here, it was quiet. And normally when it's quiet, there's something wrong. We're used to the vibrations and the noise, the airflow handling and everything else. And it's quiet. So that was kind of a bad feeling initially, but afterwards I got used to it.
We've been throwing around terms like Delta 1 and Delta 9. Briefly, what the heck do those mean?
You want to take that, Al?
Sure. If you go to other missile wings, they number them differently. But at Ellsworth, each flight was in the phonetics of the alphabet: Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo. Those are all in the 66 Missile Squadron. And then the other squadrons have the other breakdowns in the alphabet. And so it was just easier for us to know that if you say Delta 1, that's the Launch Control Center. And then if you said, Delta 2 or Delta 9, it is at the launch facility.
We just got a response from the person who asked the question about where you are. Rob Drury says, the reason I asked is that I used to be Delta Flight Commander. Me and my crew partner, Tony Gatland, painted the Domino's blast door.
Tony was here about...
Chad, put that blast door back up.
Yeah. And Rob, you need to come visit. Yeah, I had the pleasure of interviewing Tony, and in the space of about 45 minutes, we learned a lot more about the door and the art than I would, that I had any expectation for. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that struck me when I first went there, one of many things that struck me was sort of the gallows humor that is evident everywhere you look.
Yep.
I guess that's a defense mechanism, just as much as the missiles are.
Can I add something about the Domino's box, the 30 minutes or less?
Please.
When I teach the Cold War to my undergraduate students, for a long time, that was like actually one of the best ways. I would show them that image. So thank you, Rob, for, for painting it. I would show them that image and say, this was sort of what this meant. This is how fast these weapons could get from one part of, like from the Dakotas all the way to a target behind the Iron Curtain. And that it was like thinking of it like a Domino's pizza. Like they were like, oh my God, I could pick up the phone in my dorm room and get a pizza that quick. Like that like blew their mind for some reason. I'm not sure it would still have the same effect because I don't know if you still order Domino's. I'm not sure how food delivery works these days. That students used to love it. So thank you for that image. It was great.
Okay, we have a question for Linda. Linda, were you the only woman to begin with who was doing this job?
No, there were 6 of us in the initial class, and my crew partner Nancy Dean and I were assigned to one squadron. Let me think here. Lydia Negron and Marcia Weiss were assigned to another, and then Sandy Morton and Bev Rollins assigned to another. So it wasn't an easy transition. First of all, I will say we were not exactly welcomed with open arms. There wasn't anything that I would actually call sexual harassment, but there were certainly attempts at intimidation, such as, I'm going to watch your every move. Okay, fine. But initially, we were placed on gender-specific crews, meaning I could only pull alert with a woman, men could only pull alert with men. Well, that made the challenge really hard because no one on a female crew had any field experience in Minuteman. We did make mistakes because of that. I was extremely fortunate that my squadron commander helped transition me to the instructor shop fairly early. I got to learn from my fellow male instructors. I couldn't pull alerts with them, but I could instruct with them in the simulators, and I learned from them how really to be a good crew member out there. And it wasn't until, January 1988 when the crews finally integrated that women and men could pull alerts together. So it was a pretty rough time coming in, but there were 6 of us. Also, since they put each 2 of us in 3 different squadrons, if one of us got sick, we had nobody to pull alert with. So I don't think it was an ideal setup to get us integrated in the first place.
Do you feel like opportunities for women have come a long way since then in the Air Force?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. In fact, my daughter is in the Air Force, and what I notice when I go to visit her is she has a huge support group of all the other women. And we've, of course, had a couple of years ago where all the women pulling missile alerts on the bomber crews, they were all women. Who knew that the numbers would get that big, that there were enough of us to be pulling that kind of operational duty? And that is absolutely fantastic. Oh, and by the way, Anita Fugate Opperman, who was one of my, baby lieutenants at F.E. Warren, just became the wing commander at Malmstrom Air Force Base. Wow. So as they say, we've come a long way, baby.
Thank you, Linda.
Sure.
We have a question from the audience for Al and Eric. How do kids today react to seeing the Minuteman site and learning about MAD, mutually assured destruction, the history of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and other Cold War events?
It's often new information to them. One story I can tell, there's political science professor at the University of Minnesota. For about the last 5 years, I broadcast from Delta One to his class. The first year I did it is in my initial spin, I mentioned Sputnik, and the whole room, 20-year-olds, nope, they didn't know what it was. And
thanks for making me feel old, Eric.
Yeah, oh, I know. Yeah. But at the end of that section, one of the things we talked about was the protests, especially the New York City protests in 1983. And one of these college students, their reaction was, why are people protesting this now? And so, with a little time and exposure, there's a lot here that they can react to, potentially relate to. Another example is our Junior Ranger book, the current one. In different versions, there's an activity where you can design a squadron patch, or like Rob and Tony Gatlin, you can draw the art on a blackboard. And what you imagine is very interesting and often pretty funny.
One of the things I also do during my tours, or actually towards the end of the tour, especially the young folks and even the adults, the mom and dads, I have a visual aid that I show them. I say, talking about intercontinental ballistic missiles, but I explain to them, because of the program, the program in its entirety, we were able to get to the moon a lot quicker. Mm-hmm. I have the example of the Redstone. I have the example of the Atlas and the Titan II. I mean, I make sure they're aware that the only rocket specifically built for manned space flight was a Saturn V. Everything else, they hitched a ride on an ICBM.
We have a couple of other questions came in. Are the targeting monuments still out in the middle of a poor farmer's field?
Some of them are.
Yes.
A lot were removed. At Delta 9, about 1,000 feet to the northeast and west are the two markers.
Yes.
This is a question that really all of you guys can ask or answer. Do you have a favorite book on the subject of the Cold War or nuclear buildup? Or
Gretchen's is a good read. It was my first book as I was preparing to come here, and I treasure my signed copy. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
I think anybody who wants to get a good idea of that is actually to read that book. I mean, it covers a lot of area. I mean, it was excellent read.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I would say for nuclear weapons, if someone's interested in books on nuclear weapons, there's a new book called The Bomb by Fred Kaplan, which actually looks outstanding. And he really digs in. It's about strategy, though. It's like nuclear strategy in the Pentagon and the Air Command. And Eric Schlosser's Command and Control is quite a read that I assume Al's probably read and been like, maybe sort of an accidents will happen kind of thing. That's the Titan system, not the Minuteman system. And there's just so many good stories out there. I don't know. I was just the question about how students respond to the Cold War is really interesting because that's what I teach. And I teach, 75 students every fall on this topic, and they love it. They don't always know about it. They know about the Cuban Missile Crisis and the sort of big events, but I do find that it's personal stories. And so even like the National Park Service site has oral histories linked to it. And sometimes my students will go through and use some of those and read them. And it's just like recognizing that this is the sort of Cold War is this abstract big event that kind of was never fought, right? I mean, we could discuss that in a lot of ways, but for my students to know that people really had to live through this in really interesting and intimate ways and surprising ways, I think brings the story to life and really energizes them to learn more about it. Another book about the Minuteman missiles is this book called Nuclear Heartland, which was a bunch of the Nuke Watch peace activists created to map the missile field. So should you ever want to drive around and tour all these missile sites, that is like your absolute best source of information, because it gives you all the coordinates of like how to drive to sites and what nicknames they were given by various activists and neighboring communities.
Gretchen, we had a couple of questions about your book. This is another chance to do a big fat plug for you. The name of your book. At this point. Give us again.
See if I have one around.
Give us again. The name,
it's called The Missile Next Door. The Minutemen and the American Heartland. And it looks both at how people like responded to living near missile sites, but also the process of deploying the missiles and how decisions were made on where to put them. And to a certain extent, as much as I could get into sort of the people who worked in the missile fields and the interactions they had with local people. And then it sort of ends with the missiles coming out of South Dakota and how the sort of deactivation process and what that looked like and how people responded to the environmental implications of that and the national security implications of that. And so it's really like a kind of 50-year sweeping history of this. But I try to tell it from the sort of point of view of people who lived and experienced these sites. So hopefully I did that.
Chris, do you have any recommended reading on the Manhattan Project?
Oh my gosh. I always say you could spend your entire life reading about the Manhattan Project and never finish. There's so many good ones. So, there's the Richard Rhodes, obviously the making of the atomic bomb. It's a really great history, really in-depth, really detailed. And then for those of you maybe looking for some lighter reading that's easier to get to, The Girls of Atomic City by Denise Kiernan is great. It's a perspective of the young women that were recruited to go work in Oak Ridge and they had no idea what they were doing, but it's great hearing all their stories and kind of, they were young and how much fun they had and what they did. And then also it digs in lightly to the discrimination of African Americans at Oak Ridge, and which also occurred throughout the Manhattan Project, but it's a really good read.
Great. We are getting pretty close to the end of our time already, which is kind of sad because we haven't even cracked the surface of the questions that I prepared for tonight. But if you've got more questions, folks watching out there, we do have a little bit more time and love to hear them. But until we get more questions, let's see here. Al, you obviously have returned to the missile field in a very different role as a park volunteer and as a tour guide. What are some of the questions that visitors ask you? And
how big is the bomb? How were you selected to get in this career field? What kind of training were you involved in? It runs the whole gamut. I think the biggest thing that people find surprising is the average age. The average age is about 22 years old. And there people are amazed that's the age that we allow folks to work on this type of system. I guess at that age you're trainable too. So, it is interesting. I mean, there's a wealth of questions. It's just you try to answer it as best you can. Sometimes I'm asked questions I really can't answer because it's still sensitive. So I just give them the look and say, well, can't tell you. So we go from there.
Eric, before we run out of time, I want to make sure that we acknowledge a few people who are not with us tonight. Chad, we've got some photos of these individuals, but there are three people that we featured quite prominently in the film that are no longer with us. Bruce Blair and Sergei Khrushchev and Stanislav Petrov. So if you watch the film, these three faces will be very familiar. Eric, tell me what goes through your mind when you see these photos and think about in the very short time. I think that we finished the film about 2 years ago, and we've already lost three of the major players.
Well, the film is a testament to these men, their experiences, their role in this, almost impossibly large story that we're telling. The Cold War is super complex. The missile is one way that kind of makes sense of it, and each of these men contributed to that story in very unique ways. Bruce especially, he's a reminder that every missile officer was an individual, and they all came away from the experience with different, very individual reactions. He was moved by his experience as a missile officer to become a nuclear weapons abolitionist. And his questioning, his expertise really add both to the film and then to the bigger civic dialogue that's possible. And I see a question popped up about Stanislav Petrov. Our current staff, I wasn't here. Stanislav came to the park in 2007. And so one of the pictures that was shown was our first chief of interpretation, Park Ranger Chris Wilkinson with Stanislav, during that visit.
Chad, we have that photo. There it is.
Yep. But the film, allows them to continue to tell their story, and that's something I'm really proud of. And meeting Bruce a couple of years ago and interacting with him, really helped the film succeed, because it's through him that we were able to get the footage of Stanislav Petrov that is the counterpoint to the story that Al tells.
We have a question. Linda has remained active with the current younger generation of missileers. How do they compare with Cold War era missileers that you served with as a lieutenant? Do they face different challenges?
I think their challenge is far different, because when we had the USSR, I knew exactly who my enemy was. I knew they didn't want to die. I didn't want to die. When you have adversaries now who have nuclear missiles, that part of their culture says it's honor to die. It makes deterrence much harder. You have to find another way to make sure they don't use them. The deterrence of the Cold War is not completely applicable to those that have nuclear weapons these days. And I think that's very hard to get across to crew members sometimes, why they matter. Sometimes they think it doesn't matter that they're out there on alert. Yes, it still matters. And the fact that they do their job to perfection matters. But from a world standpoint of, well, we've got crazies that just want to blow everything up. Oh, what does it matter that I'm out there? Okay, I think it is much harder for a commander these days to talk to their troops and say, it still matters that you're doing your job. It still matters that you're sitting alert and that you're communicating that you will do your job if you're directed to do so.
We got a question about the Soviet perspective, which I think we did a pretty good job of covering in the film, but it's a very important perspective. I'm glad we did that. And the question is, can anyone recommend any good material on the Soviet perspective of the U.S. nuclear enterprise during that time?
I actually just read a book called Armageddon Insurance, which isn't quite about that subject, but Armageddon Insurance looks at the American and Soviet like civil defense programs, but it deals in pretty good detail, as much as I've seen, especially on the Soviet side, about how the Soviets were reading American policies, weapon systems, and programs, and then calibrating their civil defense to that. I mean, the book is a sort of depressing look at how people kept misjudging each other over and over again, and the sort of danger of that. But it's one of the only books that I've seen that actually does a pretty good job showing both sides at the same time. It's called Armageddon Insurance.
Great.
I will
Thanks,
also add, there's a little different perspective. When we had the Russians come to F.E. Warren Air Force Base, this is after the START talks, so they were allowed to go out and look at some of our facilities. One of the officers spent a great deal of time telling me how many opportunities there were for women in the Russian military. And after 2 days of this, finally the last day, he reached over, patted my hand and said, "But you do understand the men have to make all the important decisions." So thank you.
Thanks, Linda. We have like 3 minutes left, and before we go, I absolutely must recognize another invaluable partner in this project, and that was our production contractor, Boston Productions. I want to give a shout out to Candy Moulton and Mike Sullivan, and Bob Knoll, Ron Blau, and the entire team at BPI. You guys did a great job. We've won a lot of awards for this film, and that's a testament to the great creative and technical work that you guys did. And I also want to give a shout out to Ruth Mendelson, who wrote the original music for this film. I love the score in this movie. So thanks, Ruth, if you're watching. You made a difference. We have no more questions, and we have no more time. So any last words? We have 2 minutes, so I'm gonna give you guys a quick chance to share any final words or final thoughts that you might have. Chris, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Well, I wasn't ready for that, actually. I just would like to encourage, I guess what I'll do is encourage everyone to check out the Manhattan Project National Historical Park website. We have a whole webpage set up for Days of Peace and Remembrance. And if you want, follow us on our social media channel. The Hiroshima Peace Museum loaned us some artwork that we're allowed to post until the end of the month. And it's very profound. It's very emotional, and it's people reflecting on what they saw when the bombs when the bomb was dropped on Hiroshima. So very profound, really good artwork too. So I encourage everyone to check us out this weekend and see what we're doing. And if you feel so compelled, send us a crane with your own personal message of peace, whatever that means to you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Eric, you're the boss. I'm going to give you the last word.
Well, thank you for that, Mark. The park is open. We are doing tours of the top side and the grounds around Delta One. Tours are full. They're by reservation, but the park is open. We aren't showing the film in the theater, so watch it on YouTube before you come. But the park is open. It's a remarkable little place on the way to other destinations. We would love for people to make trips specifically to come to see us. Most of our visitors don't, except for the Cold War veterans that we see nearly every day. And we're here to tell their story, to populate their experiences in these physical places, including the control center.
Great. Well, Eric, it's been an honor and a pleasure working with you on this project, as it has been with everyone else on the panel. Thank you all so very much for sharing your time with us tonight. We have run out of time. This broadcast or this webcast will be archived on YouTube, and we will post some additional information in the description, YouTube description. So come back and we will have that information if you want to learn more about this topic. Chad, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Thank you all very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.